everybody. It's your best friend Kenny, and we are back with another entry in my Iceberg series. This is the Unsolved Mysteries and Weird Things Iceberg by Juan the Pickle. We are starting on Tier 4 today, which means we go deeper and deeper into the iceberg chart. Now we're talking about disturbing things, unsolved mysteries that are hard to find. A lot of people don't know about this stuff. A lot of the research has been hard on some of these things because there isn't a lot of info out there. So we're breaking new ground here, and I'm excited to get going. Make sure you are subscribed to this channel, The Spooky Lawyer. If you have some spooky or disturbing stories you want me to research, send me an email at thespookylawyer@gmail.com. Emails are coming in. We're getting all sorts of interesting stories, and I'm in the process of working on those. But for today, let's get spooky. Charlie No-Face. Charlie No-Face is a legend from Pennsylvania, and it originates about a boy or a man named Raymond Robinson, who was born on October 29th, 1910, in Beaver County, Pennsylvania. I assume they have beavers in Beaver County, Pennsylvania. If they don't, it's false advertising. When Raymond was 8 years old, he was playing with friends near a trolley bridge in Beaver Falls when he tried to climb an electrical pole. He was electrocuted, resulting in severe burns and the loss of his eyes, nose, and right arm. After the incident, he had to be under his family care for his entire life, and he lived with relatives in Coppell, Pennsylvania. He actually found a way to make money making doormats and leather wallets to sell to locals. He avoided the public due to his appearance, so he would go for long walks during the night because he believed it would get him less attention at night. People would drive along the road. He preferred to drive around a Route 351, and people would drive around Route 351 hoping to catch a glimpse of what they called Charlie No-Face. Despite this intrusive and sort of demeaning curiosity, Raymond was reportedly kind to those he talked to and would often accept cigarettes or small talk with those who approached him. In his later years, Raymond lived at the Beaver County Geriatric Center, and he passed away on June 11th, 1985 at the age of 74. This is sort of an interesting story because, this is an urban legend, but it's one of the urban legends that are sort of based on a real person or real story. So it's not as exaggerated as an urban legend. This was a real guy. He existed. And unfortunately, because of a tragic accident he was in, he had this appearance that made him a local legend. And he seemed to be in a pretty okay place mentally with it if he was able to be kind to people who were, sort of treating him like something to gawk at. The Circleville Letters. The Circleville Letters are a mystery that has haunted the small town of Circleville, Ohio for decades. Starting in 1977, residents began receiving anonymous, threatening letters filled with accusations of affairs, corruption, and even murder. These letters terrorized the community and remain largely unsolved to this day. The letters were addressed to specific individuals and contained highly personal information about their lives, including alleged secrets and scandals. Many letters contained threats of violence or harm if the recipients didn't comply with the writer's demands. While many residents received letters, the writer seemed particularly fixated on Mary Gillespie, a school bus driver, and Gordon Massey, the the school superintendent, accusing them of having an affair. In 1977, the first letters appeared, targeting various residents and businesses in Circleville. Ron Gillespie, Mary's husband, died in a single-car accident in 1977 under suspicious circumstances, while receiving letters of accusing his wife of infidelity. In 1983, Mary Gillespie found a booby-trapped sign with a loaded gun aimed at her school bus route. The gun was traced to her brother-in-law, Paul Froese, who was convicted of attempted murder. Between 1983 and 1994, despite Froese's imprisonment, the letters continue, even being sent from different locations. In 1994, Froese was released from prison, and the letters abruptly stopped. There are several theories about who could have written these letters. First, Paul Froese. While he was convicted for the booby trap, many doubt he was the sole author due to the letters continuing during his incarceration. Mary Gillespie. Some suspect she may have been involved either as a writer or in collaboration with someone else, perhaps to frame Froese. It's also possible that these were multiple writers were involved in this and sending the letters, especially given the long time frame and different handwriting styles. People wonder who was behind the Circleville letters. What was the writer's motivation for terrorizing the town for so many years? Was the death of Ron Gillespie truly an accident, or was he murdered as the letters suggested? I don't know if that Simpsons episode is based on this, this Circleville Letters thing, but it really sounds familiar. You know, the one I'm talking about, I think it was part of the Treehouse of Horrors. And, my favorite part was the kids would be like talking in like fake British accents, and, they'd be like talking on the radio, and they'd be like, and we have more about Homer Simpson. Again, I don't know if this took inspiration from that, but it sounds very, very much like it. As to who did this, who knows? This kind of sounds like stuff that would happen on Facebook before Facebook, right? And it's kind of funny to think that this kind of garbage happened, even in the 80s. Like, this sort of stuff has happened before. People with anonymous accounts trying to harass people. People are sending anonymous letters to people. This one is particularly juicy, though. The Isdal Woman. The Isdal Woman is a Cold War era mystery. In November 1970, a badly burned body of an unidentified woman was found in the Isdalen Valley, Ice Valley, in Bergen, Norway. The circumstances surrounding her death were strange, and despite decades of investigation, her identity and the cause of her death is unknown. Here's what we know. November 29th, 1970, a university professor and his two young daughters discovered the body in a remote area of Isdalen. The body was badly burned, and many of the identifying labels on her belongings had been removed. She was found lying on her back with her arms crossed, which is not a typical position for a self-unaliving or an accidental death. Police investigated. They found numerous items near the body, including suitcases, wigs, a coded diary, and a prescription bottle with a fake name on it. It's believed that she may have used several aliases. She may have traveled frequently and stayed a lot around the Bergen area. Despite efforts, including facial reconstruction, authorities have been unable to identify her. The cause of her death was a combination of carbon monoxide poisoning and a possible barbiturate overdose. But whether it was self-unaliving or not remains uncertain. Now, there's some theories, given the fact that this happened during the Cold War, that she was a spy. The use of multiple identities, what appears to be frequent traveling. She was found in an area close to military installations, and this sort of supports this theory. It's also possible that she had been in witness protection and was fleeing some sort of danger. There have been some recent developments. In 2016, there was isotope analysis of her teeth, which indicated she likely grew up in or around Nuremberg, Germany. In 2017, there was DNA analysis, which confirmed her European ancestry and further supported the isotope analysis. But again, who was she? Why was she in Bergen? Why was she traveling around so much? Why did she have all these assumed identities? What happened to her? No one knows. This kind of sounds like a movie. This kind of sounds like a Cold War movie, and I'm sure there's a fascinating story behind this. But whenever I see these stories about, some body that's found and no one knows who it is, it makes me sad. It's sad to think that this person, has loved ones that have no idea what happened to her. The Eilean Moor Lighthouse Keepers. The Eilean Moor Lighthouse Keepers are unexplained disappearances. In December 1900, 3 keepers vanished without a trace from the Flallan Isles Lighthouse on Eilean Moor, a remote island off the coast of Scotland. The Eilean Moor is the largest of the 7 Flallan Isles located in the Outer Hebrides. The lighthouse was newly built at the time, perched on a high cliff, and exposed to the harsh elements of the Atlantic Ocean. The island is remote and difficult to access, especially during the rough winter. The 3 keepers who disappeared are named James Ducat, who was the principal keeper, Thomas Marshall, who was the second assistant, and Donald MacArthur, which is known as the occasional keeper. December 15th, 1900 was the last known entry in the lighthouse logbook. In December 26, 1900, the relief vessel, the Hesperus, arrived and found the lighthouse completely deserted. There was no sign of struggle. The lighthouse was in order, but there was no sign of the keepers. Their coats were still hanging, and the table was set for a meal. That happens so often where people have the table set for a meal. Like people are like cooking or about to cook, and then all of a sudden they disappear. Now, there's been investigations into this, obviously. The lighthouse logbook contains some unusual entries leading up to the disappearance, mentioning strong storms and unusual anxieties. Although these entries have been questioned for their authenticity. Again, they don't know if these entries are true. Despite a thorough search of the island and surrounding waters, no bodies have been found, and no definitive explanation for their disappearances have ever been established. There are some theories as to what might have happened. One is a rogue wave. A giant rogue wave may have swept the keepers off the cliffs while they were working outside. Oh, at least that would be quick. Storms. The logbook entries mention severe storms, and it's possible they were swept away or drowned while trying to secure equipment. Foul play. Although there is a lack of any evidence of foul play, some have speculated that there was maybe a conflict between the keepers or some other sort of foul play. And of course, given the remote and isolated location, there are theories of paranormal activity, ghosts, sea monsters, or aliens. Now, personally, I want to think that this was Nessie that did this. This was Nessie's revenge. Nessie went all the way. I know Loch Ness is nowhere near these islands, but maybe Nessie or a couple relatives ran over there, snatched these people out of the lighthouse, and went back to Loch Ness. But as you guys know, I'm a big fan of Nessie. So, Nessie's one of those things I always want. Maybe Nessie and Cthulhu were working together. Nessie and Cthulhu were in cahoots. Okay, I'll stop. Okay, I lied. I'm never going to stop talking about Nessie and Cthulhu. The dawn is your enemy. The dawn is your enemy is a phrase associated with a series of sign-off bumpers that the late-night television programming block of Adult Swim used to air between 2005 and 2010. These bumpers were short, surreal, unsettling segments that were played during the transition from Adult Swim back to Cartoon Network in the early morning hours. People found this creepy. The dawn is your enemy is an ominous statement, an ominous phrase. In theory, Adult Swim would transition back to Cartoon Network at dawn, so it sort of made sense in this context. The accompanying visuals were often minimalistic but unsettling. A common image was a still photograph of a desolate landscape with a looming sun in the background. Sometimes the sun would even appear to wink, adding to the creepiness. The background music was often eerie and discordant, further enhancing the unsettling atmosphere. Now, of course, Cartoon Network and Adult Swim has never officially explained the bumpers. But, Cartoon Network and Adult Swim are weird on purpose all the time. That's part of their thing. There's some theories that the purpose of this bumper was intended to frighten young children who might have been staying up late watching Adult Swim. Another theory is that the bumpers were simply a branding tactic to reinforce Adult Swim image as edgy and unconventional. Adult Swim was known for absurdist humor, and the bumpers could be seen as an extension of that. Now, I think that's probably the most likely thing. This was just as the internet was sort of becoming what we know it to be. 2005 was when YouTube started. So I'm sure, or around the time that YouTube started. So I'm sure that the idea behind this was Adult Swim just trying to be as weird as possible because that was their thing. Killing Stone. The Killing Stone, or the Sesho Psyche, I'm sure I murdered that in Japanese, is a volcanic rock located in the Nasu Highlands of the Tochigi Prefecture in Japan. It is a local legend and emits a poisonous gas. According to Japanese mythology, the Killing Stone is a transformed corpse of Temomo no Mei, a beautiful woman who is actually a nine-tailed fox spirit in disguise. She was a powerful and evil entity who plotted to kill Emperor Toba and overthrow the government. She was eventually hunted down and killed by the warrior Mura no Suki. Her spirit, however, remained and her body turned into the Killing Stone, which emitted the poisonous fumes that killed everything that touched it. A Buddhist priest named Geno eventually confronted the spirit and, through exorcism and prayers, convinced it to find peace. Now, in reality, the Killing Stone is located in an area with volcanic activity, and the sulfurous gases it releases are toxic. This natural phenomenon likely contributed to the development of the legend. In March 2022, the Killing Stone split in two, causing quite a stir. Many people believe that the spirit of Tomano no Mei had been released. While scientists attributed the split to a natural weathering and freezing, the event renewed interest in the legend and drew many visitors to the site. The Killing Stone is, today, a popular tourist attraction. It's roped off to prevent people from touching it and inhaling the toxic gases. But, some people are still trying to get in there and, smell this toxic thing, right? The area surrounding the stone is considered sacred ground, and visitors can find a small shrine nearby. The Killing Stone has inspired numerous works of art, literature, and theater in Japan, and the story continues to fascinate and intrigue people with its blend of history, mythology, and natural phenomenon. It's most likely that this is just a natural occurrence, and it's cool. The local legend around it is cool. I think it's nice. I like the legend, but it's a legend. Rat Kings. A rat king is a phenomenon where a group of rats have their tails intertwined and become fused together, which creates a horrifying mass of rodents that are unable to separate and must move as one. Why does this happen? Well, people don't know. There are several theories as to why this happens. Tangled tails. Young rats with their flexible tails might get tangled together in materials like hair, nesting materials, or sticky substances like sap or gum. As they grow, their tails become intertwined and eventually fused. It's believed that possibly in colder climates, rats may huddle together for warmth and their tails could become frozen together. This is a rare occurrence, and there are only a handful of documented cases throughout history. Now, I've also read, when I was researching this, I've also heard that this is a hoax. So it's sort of up to you what you want to believe. You know, whether this is just a hoax, whether this is something that just had sort of happened, you know, once or twice. Scientists are skeptical about the existence of rat kings. And they believe that most of the historical cases are either hoaxes or misinterpretations. But there are preserved specimens in museums around the world, and there have been some documented instances, including some captured on video. For example, in 2021, a farmer in Estonia discovered a rat king consisting of 13 rats. Also in 2021, in Russia, a rat king was found in a veterinary clinic. These recent examples make me hope that this is a natural occurring phenomenon and not just some disgusting thing that somebody is doing to rats, you know, for internet points or internet whatever. But also, this is pretty gross. Jennifer Fairgate. In 1995, Jennifer Fairgate, under an alias, checked into the Oslo Hotel in Norway, and she was found dead in her room just days later. Despite investigation, her identity and the circumstances surrounding her death are unknown. Here's what we know. On May 31st, 1995, a woman checked into the Oslo Plaza Hotel under the name Jennifer Fairgate. She was described as elegant and well-dressed, around 30 years old, with shoulder-length dark hair. Hotel staff noticed she was acting unusual. She carried no luggage initially and only had a small handbag. She requested a specific room facing the royal palace. She was very quiet and rarely interacted with the staff. She paid for her room in cash. Later, a suitcase arrived for her containing clothes and toiletries, but with all labels and identifying marks meticulously removed. On June 3rd, 1995, the hotel staff found Jennifer Fairgate dead in her room, lying on her back in the bed with a gunshot wound to her forehead. A 9mm Browning pistol was found in her hand, but there were no fingerprints on it, not even hers. She had no identification, no passport, no driver's license, or any other form of identification in the room or among her belongings. Despite investigation by Norwegian police, including international inquiries and facial reconstruction attempts, they've been unable to determine her identity. So who was she? Again, like some of the previous ones that we've discussed in this series, like I said, it's sad that no one knows who this person was. It definitely seems to me like this could be another one of these cases of sort of foul play, or that this was some sort of political or spy individual or someone who was on the run. There's been theories that, like I said, she might have been a spy, she might have been involved in organized crime, or that there have been other reasons that she was trying to disappear. The Setagaya family massacre. The Setagaya family massacre is an unsolved crime from Japan. On December 30th, 2000, a family of 4 was brutally massacred in their home in the Setagaya ward of Tokyo. The killer not only committed this horrible crime, but remained in the house for several hours afterward, leaving behind a lot of evidence, and yet managed to escape without a trace. The victims were Mikio Miyazawa, a father, and a businessman who worked for a British company. Yasuko Miyazawa, the mother, and a part-time tutor. Nina Miyazawa, who was 8 at the time, an elementary school student, and Rai Miyazawa, who was 6 and a kindergartner. On the morning of December 31st, 2000, Yasuko's mother discovered the bodies after being unable to reach the family. Mikio was found stabbed to death near the stairs, and Yasuko was found stabbed in her bedroom. The killer remained in the house for hours after the murder, eating ice cream, using the family computer, and even taking a nap. It's kind of like the murderer version of Goldilocks, right? The killer left behind a lot of evidence, including fingerprints were found throughout the house, including on the murder weapon, which was a sashimi knife from the family's kitchen. Bloody footprints were found, suggesting the killer wore a size 28 centimeter or an approximately 10.5 US size shoe. The killer left behind a bloodstained sweatshirt, a hat, gloves, and a hip bag containing sand that was later traced to a US military base in Okinawa. The police launched a massive investigation, interviewed thousands of people, and have followed up on countless leads. The case has even garnered international attention, and authorities sought assistance from Interpol and other agencies. Despite the evidence, the killer's identity remains a mystery. Some speculate that the killer may have had a connection to organized crime and that it was perhaps a hit gone wrong or a revenge killing. Others believe it might have been a personal grudge. The killer may have had a personal vendetta against the family, although no clear motive has been established. Another theory is it was just a random act of violence, which is chilling. Now, this was before, since this was in 2000, this was before there were cameras everywhere. This was before everyone had cell phones in their pockets. This is before there was all this way to catch sort of criminals doing this stuff. And, it's sort of wild that it feels like this happened recently, but really this occurrence happened in another time. And that's why this person was able to get away with this. You couldn't do what this person did today. There would be camera footage from every house people drove by. There would be, surveillance footage everywhere. There would be cell phone pings. They would get you right away. And it's sort of wild to think that, that's how much our society has changed in just, a few decades. Unsinkable Sam. Unsinkable Sam was a ship's cat who served on 3 different warships during World War II. Remarkably, he survived the sinking of all 3 ships, which earned his nickname Unsinkable Sam. He was originally named Oscar and served on the German battleship Bismarck. Now, I don't know why we're considering these cats serving, but sure. After the Bismarck sank, he was rescued and served on the British destroyer, the HMS Cossack. When the Cossack was sunk, he was rescued again and served on the aircraft carrier, the HMS Ark Royal. The Ark Royal was torpedoed, and Sam survived once more. Personally, I think Sam might have been bad luck for those ships, but good luck for a cat. The 1970 monkey head experiment. I don't like this stuff. I don't like people being mean to animals. These were experiments where a doctor would transplant one monkey's head onto another monkey's body. I'm sure that there are scientific reasons for doing so. I just don't like thinking about it. Supposedly, these experiments were performed by Dr. Robert Wright, who was a neurosurgeon, and supposedly the transplanted head was able to see, hear, and even bite. Robert Liston. Robert Liston was a 19th century Scottish surgeon known for his speed and skill in an era before anesthesia. Now, I don't want a surgeon that's known for his speed. Skill, yeah. Speed, no. He was renowned for his amputations which he could perform in under 30 seconds. Again, I think 30 seconds is too short for an amputation. I don't think that's a good thing. I think an amputation should probably take longer than 30 seconds. He also pioneered new surgical techniques and invented surgical instruments. However, he was known for his high mortality rate, due in part to the lack of sterile techniques he took at the time. I'm shocked. I'm shocked the guy that is speed running amputations had a high mortality rate and wasn't the best at cleaning. In one famous case, Liston reportedly amputated the fingers of his assistant while performing a leg amputation. Both the patient and the assistant later died of an infection, and a spectator reportedly died of shock, resulting in a 300% mortality rate for the operation. That's not a good rate. You don't want to have a 300% mortality rate for your operations. You don't want to have a 100%. You certainly don't want to have a 300%. Otto Warmbier. Otto Warmbier was an American college student who was arrested in North Korea in 2016 for allegedly attempting to steal a propaganda poster. He was sentenced to 15 years of hard labor, and while in custody, he suffered a severe neurological injury that left him in a coma. He was released back to the United States in 2017, but died shortly after. The mystery here is what was the injury? The North Korean government claims he contracted botulism, but U.S. doctors found no evidence of this. And his death has sparked outrage and condemnation of the North Korean regime. As if they need any more outrage or condemnation directed towards them. Oh, again, this is horrible. He suffered some sort of injury, and the belief is he was likely tortured and experimented on, which caused him this awful condition that left him in a coma. Vladimir Komarov. Vladimir Komarov was a Soviet cosmonaut who became the first person to die during a spaceflight. I've always liked the term cosmonaut. I don't know the difference between a cosmonaut and an astronaut, or if they're the same thing, but I think cosmonaut is a cooler term. Komarov was born on March 16th, 1927 in Moscow. He joined the Soviet Air Force at 15 and became a pilot in 1949. He graduated from the Zhukovsky Air Force Engineering Academy. In 1959, Komarov was selected to be part of the first Soviet cosmonaut team. And he became a key contributor to space vehicle design, cosmonaut training, and evaluation. In October 1964, Komarov commanded Voskhod 1, which was the first spaceflight to carry more than one crew member. This made him a national hero. Soyuz 1 was Komarov's second spaceflight, which was in April 1967. However, the mission was plagued with technical issues. Despite these issues, Komarov was ordered to proceed. During the Soyuz 1 mission, multiple systems failed, including the navigation system, the solar panels, and finally, the parachute system. Komarov's capsule crashed into the ground after re-entry, killing him instantly. He was 40 years old. That just seems bad. It seems, but I get that is sort of a risk when you go into space. See, I'm not interested in going into space. I know you've got like all these people, these billionaires who want to go to space. And a few years ago, you had the guy from NSYNC who was going to go to space. I feel like I don't want to go to space. Too easy for something bad to happen up to you out there. And I'm going to stay here. All right. You want to go? Go. You want to come hang with me here? Hang with me here. The Yellowstone Hot Springs deaths. Yellowstone National Park is famous for its stunning geothermal features, including geysers and hot springs. However, these geysers and hot springs can be extremely deadly. There have been numerous deaths and injuries related to these hot springs. The hot springs can reach temperatures exceeding 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Falling into one can cause severe burns, often leading to death. You're basically sous videing yourself. Many hot springs are also highly acidic, capable of dissolving flesh and bone. The ground around these hot springs can be thin and fragile, which can lead to unexpected collapses and falls. Oh, tourists, man. In 2016, a young man tragically died after slipping into a hot spring while trying to hot pot, which is illegally soaking in the thermal feature. His body was dissolved in the acidic water before it could be removed. Don't do this. Don't go outside of the bounds of where you're supposed to go at Yellowstone, man. In 2022, a 70-year-old man died after falling into a hot spring at the West Thumb Geyser Basin. And, I feel like, I don't know if it's the type of thing where you just hear about more of this stuff because of social media, or if people just keep doing this stuff because they see it on social media. But you should not mess with nature. You should not go in something that people who are smarter than you, people who know this stuff better than you, tell you not to go in. Park rangers know their park better than you do. Don't go hot potting. Don't jump into a thermal area. Don't go into something just because it's hot and think, oh no, you can go sit in a hot tub. Go sit in a hot tub if you want to sit in warm water, or a bath. Go sit in the bath. Bad things can still happen to you there, but it probably won't be this bad. The surrogate mother experiment and the ape and the child experiment. This refers to experiments conducted by Harry Harlow in the 1950s and 60s. He explored the importance of maternal attachment and contact comfort in rhesus monkeys using surrogate mothers. Here's how the experiment worked. Harlow separated infant rhesus monkeys from their biological mothers shortly after birth. He then introduced them to two types of artificial surrogate mothers. A wire mother, which was a surrogate made of wire mesh and had a bottle attached to provide food, and a cloth mother. The surrogate mother was made of soft terry cloth but did not provide food. Harlow observed that the infant monkeys overwhelmingly preferred the cloth mother, even though it did not provide nourishment. They would cling to the cloth mother for comfort and security, especially when frightened or stressed. This demonstrated that contact comfort and emotional bonding were more crucial for development than simply providing food. Now I've heard of this experiment a lot, and it always just makes me sad. I feel bad for the poor monkeys, and it also makes me feel bad for people who don't have, parents who provide this sort of comfort to them. The 1904 Marathon. The 1904 Marathon was in St. Louis, Missouri, and is one of the most chaotic races in Olympic history. The race took place on a hot and humid day with temperatures reaching 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Oof, that's brutal. The course was made up of mostly dirt roads with passing cars kicking up dust that choked the runners. They didn't even stop the cars from going around the course. Jesus. The route included challenging hills, which exhausted the athletes. A bunch of weird stuff happened. For example, Fred Lors, who was an American runner, suffered cramps earlier in the race and hitched a ride in a car for 11 miles. He then rejoined the race and crossed the finish line first, pretending he had run the whole way. But he was quickly exposed and disqualified. Did he think he wasn't going to get caught? Maybe it was 1904. Maybe it was easier to pull that off. I don't know. I feel like that's something he probably did before. Thomas Hicks. The eventual real winner, Thomas Hicks, was aided by his trainers who administer a concoction of rat poison, brandy, and raw eggs throughout the race. He barely made it to the finish line in a delirious state. Seems like a wild cocktail right there. William Garcia collapsed and was found lying unconscious with several internal injuries caused by dust inhalation. He nearly died. And Darren Carvajal was a Cuban runner who ran the race in street clothes and dress shoes, stopped to chat with spectators, snacked on apples he found in an orchard, and even took a nap before finishing in fourth place. Due to the difficulty of traveling to St. Louis at the time, only 14 of the 32 starters were from outside of the United States. This is just a wild story. You have all sorts of wild stuff going on here. I'm particularly confused by the rat poison, brandy, and raw eggs mixture. Because those are all things that are sort of bad for you, or at least people think, well, everyone thinks rat poison is bad for you. Most people think rat poison is bad for you. But, I remember people, used to say raw eggs were bad for you. And I know there's a lot of people who say brandy and alcohol is bad for you. It's almost like if they're like, all these things are really bad, so take them all and let's see what happens. Phineas Gage. Phineas Gage was an American railroad construction foreman who became famous for surviving a horrific accident in 1948 that changed his life and contributed significantly to our understanding of the brain. While working on a railroad in Vermont, Gage was using a tamping iron, a long, heavy rod, to pack explosive powder into a hole. The powder accidentally detonated, sending the tamping iron shooting upward through Gage's left cheek and passing behind his left eye and exiting through the top of his skull. Despite this gruesome injury, Gage survived. He remained conscious and was able to speak and walk with assistance shortly after the accident. Now, I think I wouldn't want to remain conscious through this, at least while they figured out what they were going to do. I think I would want to be put under for a little bit while they're like, all right, we're going to figure out what we're going to do here. But now, although Gage physically recovered, the damage to his brain, and particularly his frontal lobe, resulted in personality changes. He was once a responsible and well-mannered man. He became impulsive, irritable, and prone to profanity. His friends and family said he was no longer Gage. Gage's case provided early evidence of the connection between the frontal lobe and personality, behavior, and social cognition. And it demonstrated that damage to specific brain regions could result in distinct changes in personality and executive functions. Gage struggled to hold down jobs and maintain social relationships after the accident. He spent more time traveling and exhibiting himself as a medical curiosity. He eventually worked as a stagecoach driver in Chile before returning to the United States, where he died in 1860 from seizures that were likely related to his injury. This is one of those cases where you hear about it and you just think, oh my God. These kind of brutal, awful things are how we learn more about our bodies. So, a bad thing for him, but it contributed to helping humanity. Vladimir Demikhov. Vladimir Demikhov was a Soviet scientist and a pioneer in the field of organ transplantation. His work laid the foundation for many life-saving procedures that we have today. He was born into a peasant family in Russia, however, and he had an interest in biology from a young age. In 1937, as a student, he designed and built the world's first artificial heart. He served in the Red Army during World War II as a pathologist. After the war, Demikhov dedicated himself to experimental surgery and transplantation, and he achieved a remarkable series of firsts. In 1946, he performed the first heart-lung transplant and the first intrathoracic heterotopic heart transplant in an animal. In 1947, he conducted the first lung transplant in a human. In 1948, he performed the first liver transplant. In 1951, he performed the first orthotopic heart transplant. In 1952, he performed the first mammary coronary anastomosis. And in 1953, he successfully completed the first experimental coronary artery bypass operation. I can tell you, I love the guy. I love that we were able to figure this out. And obviously, his work has saved countless lives. I would not want to be the first person who gets any type of surgery. Now, I understand there are certain circumstances where, no one knows what's going on, and you're got to be the first. You got to be part of an experimental surgery. But man, being the first person to get a heart transplant just seems like I don't want to be the 100th person to get a procedure. I don't want to be the 1,000th person to get a procedure. So, and also these type of surgeons, like there's a thin line here between madman and genius, right? And this guy has some other stuff that I'm not talking about because it involves animals and I don't like that stuff. But this guy was definitely on that line of genius and madman. What existed before the Big Bang? Well, what existed before the Big Bang? I mean, that's a great question, right? It's like one of those things that kind of hurts your brain to think about. What existed before the Earth existed? What happens when the Earth no longer exists? You just sort of stare at the sky and, there are theories about what there was. First is the nothingness concept. Some theories propose that there was literally nothing before the Big Bang. And this isn't just, empty space. This is just space and time did not exist. The singularity. The Big Bang theory suggests that the universe began from an incredibly hot, dense state called a singularity. Well, again, this is another thing we really can't comprehend, right? It was like the pre-existing existence. The butterfly effect. The butterfly effect is rooted in chaos theory, and it's that a small, seemingly insignificant event can have huge, unpredictable consequences over time. It was also a pretty good movie with Ashton Kutcher, although I don't think we like him anymore, especially with the Diddy stuff. The idea is this. A butterfly flaps its wings in Brazil, and this tiny action creates a small change in the air. The tiny change sets off a chain reaction. The change in air pressure might affect wind patterns, which could influence the formation of a storm system. Weeks later, a hurricane hits Florida. The hurricane might not have formed at all if that butterfly hadn't flapped its wings. Now, obviously, a butterfly flapping its wings probably won't cause a hurricane, but the idea is that in complex systems, like weather patterns, tiny changes in the initial conditions can lead to dramatically different outcomes over time. The butterfly effect relies on the idea of sensitive dependence on initial conditions, and even the smallest difference at the start of a process can lead to vastly different results. Because of this sensitivity, it's incredibly difficult to predict the long-term behavior of complex systems. Things are interconnected. Everything is connected, and even seemingly isolated incidents can have ripple effects throughout the system. Weather is the typical example. Small changes in atmospheric conditions can lead to major weather events. Other ideas are history, right? You've seen the meme with the little rock knocking over all the different things, right? For example, one that gets used a lot, what would happen if Archduke Franz Ferdinand hadn't been assassinated in 1914? World War I? Would World War I still have happened? Would we have had the great band, Franz Ferdinand? This also has like a more personal effect on people, right? Their personal life. A small encounter, a small decision can change the trajectory of someone's life. Ball lightning. Ball lightning is a rare atmospheric phenomenon that scientists have no explanation for. It typically appears as a luminous spherical object that varies in size from the size of a pea to several meters in diameter. They're often described as glowing orbs, and they can range in color from red, orange, and yellow to white and blue. Some reports even describe them as transparent or translucent. Ball lightning can move erratically, it can hover, it can float, it can dart around. It has been reported to even move against the wind and pass through solid objects. Unlike the fleeting flash of a lightning bolt, ball lightning can persist for several seconds, sometimes even minutes. It can vanish abruptly, sometimes with a pop or an explosion, or can simply fade away. Now, ball lightning is usually associated with thunderstorms, but it has been reported in fair weather conditions as well. Despite numerous eyewitness accounts and ongoing research, the exact cause of ball lightning remains a mystery. There are several theories that attempt to explain its formation. The first is vaporized silicone. One hypothesis suggests that when lightning strikes the ground, it vaporizes silicone in the soil. The vaporized silicone then reacts with oxygen in the air to form a glowing ball of plasma. Atmospheric maser. Another theory proposes that ball lightning is a type of atmospheric maser, which is microwave amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. This theory suggests that intense microwave radiation generated during a thunderstorm could become trapped in a plasma bubble, creating the glowing sphere. Another theory? Black holes. Some people believe that ball lightning could be related to mini black holes or other types of phenomena. It's tough to study ball lightning because it is exceedingly rare. It's an exceedingly rare and unpredictable event. Therefore, it's nearly impossible to study in a controlled environment. It also has an extremely short duration. In recent years, scientists have made some progress in understanding ball lightning. Some researchers have been able to create ball lightning-like phenomena in the laboratory using high-voltage discharges. High-voltage discharges are one of many types of discharges that you don't want to personally have, but there have also been attempts to capture ball lightning on video and analyze its spectrum. Now that people have cell phone cameras, it's easier to catch these things as they're ongoing. But ball lightning is still a mystery, and scientists continue to try to figure it out. Jack Froese. Jack Froese died of a heart attack at the age of 32 in Dunmore, Pennsylvania on June 10th, 2011. After his death, several of Jack's friends and family members reported receiving emails from his account. The emails contained personal messages and information only Jack would have known, and they even referenced events that occurred after his death. For example, his best friend, Tim Hart, received an email from Jack's email, with the subject line, "I'm watching." And it included details about a conversation they had planned to have but never did. An email to his cousin, Deneen, mentioned a photo she had posted on Facebook of her daughter wearing a pink dress at a wedding. That wedding occurred after his death. These emails have caused confusion and chills, with some people believing they're genuine messages from beyond the grave. Other people believe that it could either be hacking, that someone could have gained access to Jack's emails accounts and have sent these messages as a prank, or that Jack might have scheduled these emails to be sent after his death, although this doesn't really explain the references to events that occurred after his death. I think that this was almost certainly either a hacker or a prankster, might have been someone related to Jack. You know, people do weird stuff when people die. So I don't really buy the idea that this is some sort of like ghost or afterlife thing. I think it was most likely someone just messing around. Cheng and Eng Bunker. Cheng and Eng were conjoined twin brothers whose fame gave rise to the term Siamese twins. They were connected at the sternum by a band of cartilage, and while they shared some blood circulation, their organs were distinct. They were born in Siam, which is now Thailand, to a Chinese father and a Siamese Chinese mother. They were discovered by a British merchant named Robert Hunter, who saw their potential for exhibition and brought them to the Western world in 1829. They were exhibited as a curiosity. They toured extensively through the United States and Europe, captivating audiences with their unique condition and physical abilities. They were a medical marvel, and they were examined by numerous doctors and scientists, and they provide valuable insights into human anatomy and conjoined twinning. They eventually settled in North Carolina. In 1839, they retired from exhibiting and became naturalized U.S. citizens. In 1943, they married sisters, Adelaide and Sarah Yates. They became the fathers of 21 children between them. Cheng had 11, Eng had 10. And they became slave owners on a plantation. As they aged, their relationship reportedly became strained due to differing personalities and desires. In 1870, Cheng suffered a stroke that paralyzed his right side, and Eng had to care for them. They died within hours of each other. Eng died of a presumed heart attack a few hours after Cheng passed away in his sleep. This is a pretty complicated story. There's a lot going on here, right? First of all, the idea of this British businessman taking these people and exhibiting them as, a circus curiosity is pretty deplorable. But they were able to make a living off of that and become famous. And they were able to contribute to the medical community significantly. It helped the understanding of conjoined twinning and helped develop surgical separation possibilities. They also became plantation and slave owners, which is a whole other aspect that I didn't know about. And I don't think a lot of people know about these guys. So that's also a terrible thing. Also completely crazy that they had 21 kids. Absolutely wild. Charles Sherwood Stratton. Charles Sherwood Stratton was better known by his stage name General Tom Thumb. He was a famous American with dwarfism who achieved fame as a performer under circus owner P.T. Barnum. He was born in Bridgeport, Connecticut, to the parents of average height. He stopped growing at 6 months old and remained about 25 inches tall. He was discovered by P.T. Barnum at age 4. Barnum taught him to sing, dance, mime, and impersonate famous people. He debuted at Barnum's American Museum in New York City at age 5, toured extensively through the U.S. and Europe, and performed for royalty and massive audiences. He became a global sensation and one of the highest paid performers of his time. In 1863, he married Lavinia Warren, who was another little person performer in Barnum's troupe, and their wedding was a media spectacle and boosted their fame. They continued to tour and perform and built a mansion in Bridgeport, Connecticut. He managed to invest his earnings wisely and lived a lavish lifestyle. Again, this is sort of a conflicted case here, right? Because while this person personally benefited, Stratton personally benefited from his performances, it was quite exploitive. I have no place to judge him for making these decisions, but I think a lot of people now find this type of stuff distasteful. Fanny Mills. Fanny Mills, also known as the Ohio Bigfoot Girl, was an American woman with an unusual medical condition that made her feet grow to an enormous size. She gained fame in the late 1800s as an attraction in dime museums and sideshows. She was born August 30th in 1860 in Sussex, England. Her family emigrated to Sandusky, Ohio, when she was a child. She had a condition called Milroy's disease, a rare genetic disorder that causes lymphedema, which leads to swelling in the limbs. In Fanny's case, it affected her lower legs and feet. Her feet reached a size of a US 30, with her legs also significantly enlarged. She began exhibiting herself in 1885 at the Bowery Museum in New York. She passed May 3rd, 1899, in Sandusky, Ohio. Frank Lentini. Frank Lentini was an Italian-American sideshow performer who was famous for having 3 legs. He was born with a parasitic twin, resulting in an extra leg extending out of the right side of his body. He was born in Sicily, Italy, and Lentini's condition was the result of a partially absorbed conjoined twin. He had 3 legs, 4 feet, and 2 sets of functioning male genitalia. Ooh. Initially, his parents refused to raise him, and he was sent to live with his aunt. He later came to accept his condition and embraced the opportunities it presented. That's horrible. I feel so terrible for this guy. He was just born, no idea. His parents refused to raise him. Horrible. He came to the United States at the age of 8 and entered the sideshow business as the Great Lentini. He toured with numerous circuses, including Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey, and Buffalo Bill's Wild West Show. He was known for his agility and showmanship. He used his 3rd leg to kick a football across the stage, earning him the nickname the 3-legged football player. He was highly respected among his peers and often called the king. He got married, he had 4 children, and he became a U.S. citizen at the age of 30. And despite his physical differences, he lived a full and active life. Fee, fi, fo, fum, and fooey. Fee, fi, fo, fum, and fooey were 5 mice who traveled to the moon on the Apollo 17 mission in 1972. And they hold the world record for the most orbits of the moon by a mouse, or by mice. They were there because scientists were studying the effects of cosmic radiation on living creatures, and the mice were implanted with radiation monitors under their scalps. One of the mice died during the mission, and the remaining 4 were euthanized and dissected after their return to Earth to study the effects of space travel on their bodies. The Apollo 17 crew gave the mice their nickname. I don't know, it's kind of a bummer that they were euthanized when they got back, but I sort of understand that that's probably what would happen, right? Oscar the cat. Oscar is a famous therapy cat known for his uncanny ability to predict when residents of a nursing home were about to die. Kind of sounds to me that Oscar might have been involved, right? He lived at the Steer House Nursing and Rehabilitation Center in Providence, Rhode Island. He would curl up next to patients in their final hours, seemingly sensing their impending death. He reportedly predicted over 100 deaths with surprising accuracy. Oscar was featured in the New England Journal of Medicine and even has a book written about him by Dr. David Dosa, a geriatrician at the nursing homes. Nobody knows why he was able to do this, but there have been some theories. The first is that he may have been able to detect the smell of biochemicals that are released by dying cells. He also may have been able to observe subtle changes in patients' behavior or appearance that signaled their decline. Others believe that he could sense changes in the energy or atmosphere around those nearing deaths. One of the things that is said about Oscar, and I agree, is it's a touching story because he provided comfort to many patients and their families in their final moments. And it's true, animals have a unique ability to comfort people. So I like this story. Timothy Treadwell audio. Timothy Treadwell was the Grizzly Man, and the audio refers to the chilling audio recording captured during his fatal grizzly bear attack in 2003. The audio has never been released to the public, but it has for some reason become a source of fascination. There was a movie about this, and they don't play the actual audio of it, but they play some reaction to the director listening to the audio of it. I don't understand why this comes up in lost media circles so much. I have no desire to listen to this. It sounds horrible. There's a couple other ones in this thing too that are similar. There's the Steve Irwin stingray attack footage and the death of Brandon Lee. Again, both of these are video footage that are called lost media, but I don't really agree with these as lost media. Lost media to me is something that was available and disappeared. Something that was recorded privately or was recorded and never released isn't really lost media to me. I don't know why anyone would want to listen to the grizzly man being eaten by this bear, why anyone would want to watch Brandon Lee's final moments, or why anyone would want to watch Steve Irwin's final moments. But these things come up in these lost media videos, these lost media discussions a lot. And I have no interest to hear them. I have no interest to see them. I don't care. Okiku the doll. Okiku is a allegedly haunted doll from Japan. In 1918, a teenage boy named Ikichi Suzuki bought the doll in Sapporo for his little sister, Okiku. The girl loved the doll, played with it constantly, and even named it after herself. Sadly, Okiku died shortly after, possibly from influenza. The family kept the doll, placing it on their home altar in her memory. The family noticed something odd about the doll's hair. Originally it was cropped short, but it started to grow. They would trim it, but it kept growing back. The family believed that Okiku's spirit was residing within the doll. In 1938, the family moved and entrusted the doll to the Meninji Temple in Iwamizawa, Hokkaido. Okiku remains there to this day, displayed in a wooden box. The monks at the temple confirm that they regularly trim the doll's hair, which continues to grow. Some people believe that there is a natural explanation for the hair growth, that it is perhaps due to the type of hair used in the doll or changes in humidity. Others believe that Okiku's spirit truly inhabits the doll, with the growing hair as evidence of her presence. I don't believe that the hair is her presence in the doll. So I'm sure it is something that is more, I'm sure there's a natural explanation for it, possibly exaggerated, but I just really don't think of a haunting hair growth as really, realistic. But that's just my opinion. You can think what you want. Chris Farley's Shrek audio. Most people don't realize this, but Chris Farley was supposed to be the voice of Shrek. He was originally cast as the voice of Shrek, and he had recorded a significant portion of the dialogue before his death in 1997. From the surviving audio that has been available, it's clear that Farley's Shrek was going to be in a different direction. He was going to be a more sentimental and melancholy character than the wisecracking ogre that we saw in the final product. He was less cynical and more of a vulnerable outcast. For years, the audio was considered lost. However, snippets and clips have surfaced over time, giving fans a taste of what it might have been. It's sort of interesting to think about how different this movie would have been with Chris Farley as the voice instead of Mike Myers. And that concludes part 1 of tier 4 of the Iceberg series, the Unsolved Mysteries and Weird Things Iceberg series. Go ahead and follow me on Blue Sky and TikTok. My username is AKBrews. Go ahead and follow me on Twitter. I am also AKBrews there. If there are spooky stories you would like me to research and do a video on, send me an email at thespookylawyer@gmail.com. I appreciate you watching my videos. I appreciate your support. We have a lot of cool things that we're going to be doing this month, a lot of cool ideas that we're going to be working on. So I appreciate your viewership. Please make sure you're subscribed. And as always, stay spooky.